Now, we're very privileged to have Wilma King from the NSPCC to talk to you about listening to children. So, are you going to come up here, Wilma? Are you? Oh, you're mic'd. Okay.
I thought by this time you might have had quite a lot of talking to, and I will still continue to talk to you. But what I would like to ask you to do is to just take 2 sweeties per row and just pass it on. That way, I can engage you with all liberty. I'd like to just begin by just explaining who I am and my role. And then I'd like to talk to you about listening to children. So, do I need to go up to the front to see me? So my name's Wilma King. I'm the head of learning and development at NSPCC Childline. And my role simply is to make our volunteers and our staff brilliant. We have 1,500 volunteers. We have 300 staff members, and they're trained specifically to listen, engage, and offer advice and support to children and young people. We offer children a safe space to talk, and to talk about absolutely anything. And they do. They talk about the death of their cat. They talk about friendships at school. They talk about very serious experiences that they are having in relationships. They talk about concerns that go on in their head. And we offer them that space that says nothing is too big or too small. So, if we are offering that space to children, I'd like to ask you, what do you think children say to us? So, I hope my sweeties have been around by now, and it means that I can say, somebody with a green sweetie, tell me something that you think children say to us at Childline. Put your hand up if you have a green sweetie. So just anybody.
Kids will talk about their feelings, who they play with, who they feel safe with, what they did in school today.
Okay, thank you, they do. So another green sweetie? Okay. So I've sat here and I've listened to both speakers talking about the issues for parents and for adults. And just in the last presentation, I found myself becoming a child and thinking about all that was going on. And so, for those of you with an orange sweetie, I'd like you to put your hand up. So I'd like to hear from you, what do you think are the emotions that go on for children in the midst of the situations that you have just heard about? So tell me some thoughts and emotions you think might be going on for children.
Confused.
Confusion, yes. Somebody else. Sadness. I see the sweetie things going awry. Sorry? You need to put your hand up so that others can hear you as well.
Being scared.
Being scared, yes. Let's wait till the microphone comes so that we don't use your really lovely comments.
Pretending. The child pretends in front of one parent and pretends in front of the other, so they don't upset either parent.
Sure, yes. And that's true. What children tell us in Childline is that they end up having to be the parent. They end up having to be the adult in the situation, not just for themselves, but for their parents. And sometimes that's because, as you've just seen, the parent might be overwhelmed. They may have a mental health issue. They may be physically very unwell. But children are having to take on the stress and the fear and coping with the mental health concerns of their parents in the midst of this situation. And they tell us they feel alone. And they sometimes feel abandoned and helpless and neglected. Because in the midst of all of this, when the adults are looking at what's going on for them, the child can sometimes get lost. And they tell us three things. They tell us when families are going through that separation, they themselves get lost, as I've said, but the confusion can be overwhelming for them. They tell us that when families are going through that process, they're not heard. They're not always heard. And sometimes young children ring us at Childline, and ask us about legal advice. Can my parents do this? Can they do that? Will this happen to me? They don't know. They also tell us a third and really important thing. And that's not per se by their words, but by the range of experiences that they're happening. Now, I want you to do some work to find out what that last thing is, because I kind of feel like you've had a lot of speaking to. So, I got myself one of these lovely books. Anybody know what this book is? Okay. So, what's the object of this book? You do have to talk to me. I feel like you've had quite a lot of talking to and you're ready now, gemmed up to engage with me. What's the object of this book? Finding Wally. Yes? Finding Wally. And they tell us that actually finding their childhood can be as difficult as finding Wally. Now that's quite a sobering thought, isn't it? Finding their childhood can be as difficult as finding Wally. That's not from their words, but from the range of experiences that they tell us that they are undergoing. So I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think are the top 3 issues that young people talk to us in Childline about? The top 3 issues. Peer pressure. So bullying. Haven't got to the top 3 yet. Abuse. Haven't quite got to the top 3 yet. I'll kind of ring a fictitious bell when I do. Bullying. No, sorry. Feeling alone in the family is a kind of a semi-ring. It's a bit of a semi-ring. Sorry? Parental conflicts. That actually is the second top issue that children contact us about. Parental conflict, but I'm taking it with yours, family relationships. Keep going. I'm going to put that in the family relationships, so you're in the number 2. Top 3 things that children tell us. That is the outcome for children. In the midst of all of this, children feel that they're to blame. They feel it's their responsibility. If they had behaved better, if they were older and able to help their parents a little bit more, they might not have separated. They might not have had the arguments and the conflicts. So yes, that's an outcome for the child. But the other top 3 things, over here. Taking on the responsibilities, is that what you said? I'm going to put that again in the family relationships, yes. So I've got a hand down here. Not being listened to, yep, no. Feeling unloved. I'm going to take one more. Sorry? You're doing very well in the back there. Really well. Now, the top one is mental and emotional well-being. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to just, if you're interested to know a little bit more, is to look in our annual review. We called our annual review for 2017 and 18, The Courage to Talk. And we called it that because it takes a huge amount of courage for children to talk to us. When they come through to us, they're upset, they're concerned, they're worried, they're feeling responsible, they're feeling anxious. And then they're talking to an absolute stranger about something that is so significant and so important to them. And in those conversations, when we are creating that space for children, they tell us, firstly, their first concern, the first and highest issue for them is their mental and emotional well-being. Well, think about it. Think about what you just heard about all the dynamics that go on between parents. And think who is in the middle of that. It wouldn't be so much of an issue if there were not children involved, would there? Because those adults would fight, maybe, but then go on somewhere else. But because there is a child in the middle, they're fighting for that child's time, affection, emotions, loyalty. And that child is often feeling confused and anxious. They worry in the midst of proceedings. What do I say? I don't want to upset that person. I don't want to get it wrong. I like them both. I don't like when that person does this to me. I don't like when this happens to that parent. Right in the midst of that. And all of that leads to, no wonder, their top 3 concerns are these. Firstly, mental health. Secondly, family relationships. And thirdly, and very concerningly, suicidal thoughts and emotions. And really, in a 21st century, developed country, our young people shouldn't have to face these things. And they shouldn't have to face them with the level of frequency that we know they do. Every 25 seconds, a child contacts Childline. 800 counselling sessions are offered per day. And I want to go through with you the top 10 concerns, just so you get a feel of where children are in the midst of this. And that's not because you don't know, but because listening to children allows us to be better able to be part of that safeguarding measure for them. So you know the top 3 already, don't you? Mental health, family relationships, and then suicidal thoughts. And then bullying, we got that quite a bit. You may be surprised that that is something that came forth. But then sexual relationships, puberty, sexual health. Friendship issues was number 6. Self-harm, 7. Problems in school and education, 8. Sexual abuse, 9. Physical abuse, 10. I tell you that to remind you that in your work with children and young people, what you are doing is being there for them when they may well be going through those issues as well. I feel there is a link between what you offer and what we offer. Am I correct to say that you offer a safe space for children? Am I correct to say that you offer a listening ear as appropriate for children? And am I correct to say that you will seek to give that child and their parent whatever information and advice you can to help improve their well-being? And that's what we do. And that is the crux of how we listen to children and young people. We do have a confidentiality clause, however, and we have one that is indeed, in fact, the most unique confidential clause that exists. And that is basically to say that what a young person says to us stays with us. Because if they don't have a safe space to say and be heard, then what research tells us is that then becomes internalized. And not only is it internalized, it then manifests itself in present and later behaviors, mental health concerns, and problems with relationships. Why is it so distressing for children and young people. Why do we allow it to be that? Well, it's a product of our adult interactions. What does it mean for children and young people when those things go on? Let me read to you a poem from our message board. And this was a poem written by a young child. And just see whether you can, in some way, large or small, identify with what's happening here. Sitting, crying next to my sister, back to the door, sitting on the floor, wanting nothing more. Turn it up, play it loud, shout out the sound, stop the pounding on my door. Leave us alone. Want to call this home, but I feel so much like a pot, garden known. No bones, just shell. Too many questions, too many destinations to visit from the past. The vivid images that my mother didn't think would last. Money, 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 it's no longer funny. And just for the sake of it, I no longer like honey. Divorce, splitting into two. One daughter for each of you. Then what would I do? Those are the words of a young child trying to be heard. Now, in that situation, you might say that this is a young child who's hearing domestic abuse. We also listen to young people when they are experiencing a whole range of other abuses. I've mentioned some already. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And we wanted to be part of some form of a solution or a help. In 2013, we did a piece of research with young people about their experiences of abuse in childhood. And they told us no one listened and no one heard. We came back to that piece of research last year. And when we talked to adults and professionals, they told us it's actually quite difficult to hear a child. They too found it painful to hear a child in the midst of situations that were harmful, abusive, there was maltreatment. And I want to share with you, just for a moment, one experience I had when I was a young social worker. I was working with adoption and fostering, and I had a young child who was placed in a foster family, and the intention was that that child should stay there. They were settled. And so I needed to do a range of forms. And that involved me going and speaking to that young child to find out whether that child was indeed happy there and settled and wanted to remain. But being child-centered, we arranged that I would visit after school. After school means coming towards the end of my working day as well. And they lived some distance away. So it was quite a task to get to them. But I made it, and I got there, and it was now 4:30, coming up to 5, and I just needed to ask some questions. I just needed to know the child was settled. I wanted to ask the questions, get the child to say, yep, I'm fine, I'm happy, get out of there, get back for the hour and a half's journey, and get home and have something to eat. And I got there, and the child said to me, Miss King, I killed a spider today. No, sorry, I saved the spider's life today. And I thought, lovely. Now, can we talk about? And I had to pull myself back because I realized if I was not interested in the small things that that child was telling me about, why would that child tell me the more serious things that would lead on to my making a decision about their long-term future and their welfare? I needed to learn to listen. And to listen takes time. And the research said that there were a number of things that professionals identified that they needed to help them in order to really listen to children. And from that research, we produced a poster. In that poster, there were 3 key things summarized. The first thing is that we had to be willing to listen. We had to help children to open up. And if you're not prepared to listen, to engage, to connect, to have that eye contact, for it to be exclusive that we're talking, children will read us and they won't talk to us. The second thing was take time. Because if we didn't give children the time, they would know that we're rushing them. And I remember one of the theories that I learned is that when a child is young, they learn to read us far better than we really give them credit for. Because they've got to read the expressions on our face, the inflections in our voices, the pace in which we're talking to them, in order to know how to best engage with us. And if we're not giving children time, they know, they can tell. And then the third thing was to reflect back. To let that child know that you had heard and that you were reflecting back what was said to them. So I want to leave you with some thoughts. I want to leave you with the thought that children are resilient. Yes, and that may come at a cost. But they don't have the emotional maturity to deal with all of the stuff that your world means that they have been thrust into. And they do need us to listen. And if you are willing, I'd like to play you a video in a moment. This video came out of that research, and we produced it for a whole range of professionals. And so it may seem a bit professional to you, but the first piece of research, not seen and not heard, identified that children wanted to speak to less authoritative figures. And I know in my many years in social care that it isn't the social workers and the police that really are the ones listening and hearing children and enabling the action to be taken to safeguard them. It's you. And so when you listen to this video, it will reiterate those points that I've said about how we can listen and be there for children. Thank you. You may never have to listen to a child's disclosure. In my time, I've listened to hundreds. But do you know what is really the most important thing? That I was prepared to listen. And I ask you, because we share a commitment to children, just be a good listener. Doesn't matter what they tell you. Just be a good listener for children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Wilma. That was really, really helpful. And it's just amazing what Childline do for children in terms of, I know that family breakdowns are a huge number of calls that you get. And it's nice that one of our managers actually works in Childline.
Oh, good.
Philip.
Hello, where are you based? Oh, both. Oh, excellent. Wow, well done. I'm impressed. Thank you very much. Good to have you.
Has anybody got any questions for Wilma before we move over to Phil?
That was very powerful, thank you. You talk about disclosure or not disclosure. Are there any boundaries to the confidentiality issue in terms of what they tell you?
In terms of?
What they tell you, so things that you feel should be passed on, or are there no boundaries?
I think if we're prepared to hear a child and we're prepared to trust that it is a concern for them, then that's your guiding principle. Because once we start to set those boundaries, we then become at risk of not actually hearing the child. And I've done it myself, so easily done. I remember a child, they said, "But I did tell you." And I thought, "You didn't tell me." "Yes, I did tell you. I told you that time when we were walking over the bridge." And so I would say it is about being prepared to listen. In terms of confidentiality, we hold it very tightly. But if there is something that suggests that that child is at risk of harm, or has experienced harm and somebody else is still likely to be experiencing it, then we see that that's the overriding situation, because we make a commitment never to leave a child in a situation of ongoing harm. So that, I would say, is your guiding principle. Can I just say that I've put the website here because actually, if you want any information, there's masses of free information on our website, nspcc.org.uk. Absolutely huge. Go to the learning site, and there'll be lots there for you, particularly for professionals. And for our young people, please encourage them to go to our website. We are able to talk to children via voice, by chat, or via email. And we have a message board and a journal so they can have interaction, they can learn from one another. There is an awful lot of information there for young people. Don't feel you as adults are not provided for. So in the same way we have the Childline, we have the NSPCC helpline if you need some help and advice. So that's really, those are your key things.
Thank you very much, Wilma. And perhaps you'd like to just have this just as a token of our thanks.
Thank you very much.